You've done enough right things to know that doing more of them isn't the answer. You've read the books, taken the courses, maybe started something. And somewhere along the way, you landed on a thought you couldn't shake. The effort isn't the problem. Something else is. Something running underneath, deciding what's possible before you ever make a conscious choice. Fix that one thing, and everything that currently feels like grinding becomes something closer to selecting. Not because the work disappears, because you're finally moving in a direction where the right moves become almost obvious. Here's what that something is. In 2019, neuroscientists published brain scan data that showed something uncomfortable. A scarcity mindset doesn't just affect how you feel. It physically reduces activity in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning. Opportunity recognition, the ability to see a door that isn't obviously labeled. The broke brain and the wealthy brain aren't a metaphor. They're measurably, visibly different on a scan. But here's the thing nobody asks next. Where does that difference come from? And what does it actually look like in practice? Not in theory, not in a lab, in a real city, on a real Monday, when two people with completely different minds are standing in the same street with the same €0 and the same year ahead of them. So let's find out. Take a 60-year-old man who spent 3 decades as a warehouse manager, competent, reliable, not stupid, not lazy. He optimized for safety because safety was the intelligent thing to do. Now, strip everything away. The savings, the routine, the seniority. Transplant his mind into a 30-year-old body. New city, zero money. Nothing but the mind he's built over 60 years. Take a second man, same age. Built 3 businesses, 1 failed badly, 2 sold. Currently working on a 4th. Same transplant, same starting conditions, same city, same year, same €0. What happens in the first week? I'll show you 3 moments where the gap becomes visible. Not in their bank accounts, in their decisions, the small ones, the ones they don't even notice making. There's also something I've been building alongside this. You give it a few inputs, it builds an income asset, and it runs whether your mindset is dialed in or completely broken. I'll show you what it actually looks like near the end. On the first day, they walk the same street, same block, same morning. Marcus notices the coffee is expensive, €3.50 for something he'd make at home. He files it away as the kind of thing that eats into a budget and walks on. He's paying attention. He's being sensible. His filter is working exactly as it was designed. 50 meters behind him, James stops outside a letting agency. There's a board in the window, standard residential listings. He doesn't stop because he's decided to buy property. He doesn't have a plan. He stops because a question his brain generated automatically. Who owns these? He pulls out his phone and Googles the landlord's name. Finds a small portfolio 3 streets over. Looks up the yield. Puts the name in a note. Walks on. Marcus didn't suppress that thought. He didn't see the board and decide it wasn't relevant. The question never formed. His filter pre-screened it before it reached consciousness. This is what Maxwell Maltz spent most of his career trying to explain. Maltz was a plastic surgeon in the 1950s who noticed something strange. Patients who had surgery to correct a physical flaw, a broken nose, a scarred face, often reported no change in how they felt about themselves. The mirror had changed, their self-image hadn't, and their behavior stayed locked to the old image, not the new face. He published his findings in Psycho-Cybernetics in 1960. His core argument, the self-image acts as a thermostat, a set point. The brain doesn't pursue outcomes above the set point, it actively corrects back toward it. Not through willpower, through perception. You simply stop noticing what falls outside the range your identity has defined as possible for someone like you. A 2019 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences confirmed the neural mechanism directly. Under scarcity conditions, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex activity drops. The area responsible for long-term planning and opportunity recognition goes quiet. But here's what the study doesn't answer. Which came first? Is the scarcity creating the suppression? Or is the suppression, the years of filtering, creating the conditions for scarcity to persist? Watch Marcus, and you start to suspect it's the second one. He's not filtering out opportunities because he's broke. He's been filtering them for 30 years because his self-image defined what was realistic for someone in his position. The scarcity is downstream of the filter, not the cause of it. That's the uncomfortable version of the argument. and it matters for what happens next. By day 7, neither of them has made a single euro. Marcus has applied for 3 jobs, heard back from none. He checks his email on Tuesday, then again on Thursday. Nothing. He decides it's not going to happen this week and watches TV. Here's the thing. Marcus isn't lazy. He worked hard for 30 years. He showed up. He delivered. But his brain has now run the numbers. Effort went in, nothing came back, and this pattern has repeated enough times that the brain has started drawing a conclusion. Not consciously, automatically. It has learned that effort in this domain produces nothing, and the brain is wired to protect you from wasting energy on useless behavior. So it stops you, not through a decision, through a feeling. The motivation drains. The resistance rises. Watching TV isn't weakness. It's the brain executing an avoidance program it wrote to protect you. You cannot fight that program directly. Trying to force yourself to keep going when your brain has decided effort is pointless is like trying to stop yourself breathing. You can override it briefly. Your brain has more leverage than you do. Eventually it wins. James applied for the same jobs. Also nothing. On Wednesday, he doubles his application volume. On Thursday, he starts cold calling small businesses, restaurants, tradespeople, anyone who might need an extra pair of hands. On Friday evening, he researches what local businesses are actually hiring for and why. By Sunday, he has 12 active conversations and 0 income. The difference isn't that James is more disciplined. He's not grinding harder than Marcus. He's exerting roughly the same effort. But for James, a small push produces forward movement. For Marcus, the same push produces nothing, because his brain is in first gear with the handbrake on. The gear won't shift through willpower. The handbrake won't release through motivation. And until that changes, the effort equation is broken at the source. There's actually a way to shortcut this, where you route around the filter entirely and build something real before the old program has time to reassert itself. I'll show you what that looks like near the end. But first, what happens when a real opportunity actually lands in front of both of them? In week 3, they both get the same call. A contact of a contact needs someone to manage a small property portfolio. 3 residential units, part-time work, recurring income, no capital required. The work is operational, scheduling repairs, handling tenants, keeping records. 30 years of warehouse management is more than enough preparation. Marcus hears it and immediately starts listing what he doesn't have. He's never managed property specifically. He doesn't know the legal requirements. What if something goes wrong and he damages someone's investment? He tells the caller it sounds interesting, but he's not really qualified. He thanks him and hangs up. James hears the same pitch. His answer is yes before the caller finishes the sentence. Over the weekend, he reads everything he can find about residential property management. On Monday, he calls the owner back and says, "Look, I'm new to this specific area, so please correct me when I get something wrong. I want to figure it out, and I'll work overtime to make sure nothing falls through the cracks." The owner, who mostly needed someone reliable and communicative, says that's exactly what he was looking for. James didn't have more knowledge than Marcus. He had less anxiety about the gap between where he was and what the job required. His brain's model of what could go wrong stopped at, "I'll fix it," not at, "It will destroy me." So the opportunity registered as manageable. Marcus's brain ran the same calculation and came back with a different answer. Not because the risk was different, but because his thermostat is set lower. The self-image corrected him back before he even had time to think it through properly. That's Maltz's negative feedback loop in real time. Not a dramatic failure. A quiet, preemptive correction. The kind you'd never notice unless you knew what to look for. Neville Goddard framed this from the other direction, and it's worth the contrast. Goddard's argument, across lectures he gave throughout the 1950s and 1960s, was that identity precedes experience. Not as mysticism, as mechanism. You don't build wealth and then become someone who has wealth. You assume the identity first, think from it, filter from it, and the experience follows. Because your filter starts generating different questions. The way James stopped outside the letting agency on day 1. The set point doesn't reset through motivation. It doesn't reset through information. It resets through experience at the identity level, a result that makes "I'm the kind of person who builds assets" feel true before your brain has time to generate the correction. Which brings us to how that actually works. Marcus didn't fail because he was weak. He didn't fail because he was unlucky. He ran a program. 30 years of inputs produced a filter. The filter produced his decisions, and his decisions produced his results. By the time he was 60, the program had compounded so thoroughly that he couldn't see it operating. It felt like personality. It felt like judgment. It felt like him. What's different now is that you've watched it run from the outside. Once you've seen the thermostat kick in, once you've watched Marcus decline a real opportunity because his brain pre-screened it as above his set point, you can't unsee it in yourself. The next time you have a thought like, I'm not really qualified for this, or I should probably wait until I know more, or I'll do it when I'm more ready, there will be a part of you that registers it differently. Not as a decision, as a signal. The thermostat correcting back. You didn't write the program you're running, but you're the only one who can swap it out. The question worth sitting with isn't whether the filter is running. It is. The question is what it's set to, and whether that temperature was chosen by you or set for you by 30 years of evidence your brain collected without asking permission. Most people never ask it. That's not stupidity. That's just the program working as designed. The fastest way to reset the set point isn't information. It isn't motivation. It's a real result. Before the thermostat kicks in and corrects you back, I've been building digital assets for close to 10 years. The reason I got into it was simple. Real estate makes obvious sense as an asset class, but you need capital to get started, and most people don't have it. Digital assets don't work that way. I spent about $5,000 in 6 months building a content site once. Within 2 years, it was generating $3,000 a month. That's a return you'd need to own half a city block to match in property. The model has always been the same. Build something once, maintain it lightly, let it compound. The problem is the build phase. It takes time, it takes skill, and most people quit before they get a first result, which means the set point never gets a chance to move. AI has changed that equation. Over the last few months, I've been testing everything I can find in this space. Most of it is noise. One thing isn't. It's a system that uses AI to build and run social media content assets, the kind that generate affiliate commissions while you're not working. What makes it different from everything else I've looked at isn't that it's smarter. It's that it's so streamlined you don't need a golden brain to operate it. It handles the parts that usually kill people in the build phase. The avatar, the content engine, the sales infrastructure. $27 to get started. That's the full entry cost. For anyone who's never made their first $1,000 a month online, or has tried and not got there, this is the clearest path I've seen this year to hit that number on 1 to 2 hours a week, without capital, without existing skills, almost entirely automated. I've put a link in the description. That's all I'll say about it.